Chapter 23, Ingredients for Chaos. 2:32 p.m. Man. I really like outdoor activities. I hate being stuck inside the academy. You're right, we should go out more often. The only problem is having to walk so much. That's true, some students were chatting loudly, laughing and complaining, while the entire class of the first year moved together through the outer edges of Vehard Academy. They were on their way to the so-called Transmutation Garden, a practice area located about 40 minutes from the main building of the academy. It might seem strange at first glance, but Vehard was one of the most renowned institutions in the Kingdom of Solmir. It was known for its complete structure: classrooms, dormitories, libraries, arenas, labs, and even safe outdoor zones for field lessons, all within a single massive complex, surrounded by natural mana forests. The group had already been walking for over half an hour. Kane, as always, was going at his usual lazy pace. The walk was long, and the heat of the day only made everything more exhausting. Should have gone to bed early. He stretched his body, yawning mid-walk. Hey, are you feeling any better? Where did she come from? Actually, my shoulders are kind of sore. Want to give me a massage while we walk? Yen slowly turned her head toward Kane like he had just said the most ridiculous thing in the world. Was that too much? A noble, massaging a commoner? Ha! I don't even know why I bother asking you stuff. She was already getting annoyed just remembering. The day before, she had found out that Kane had absorbed the entire Viralis core. All of it. In just one night. One single night. She had nearly collapsed hearing that. Yen had made it very clear that the process should be done in stages, over at least 3 weeks. How did he absorb the whole core in one night, and still be alive? The Viralis core could be compared to a magical blood transfusion. The difference was that, instead of just replacing part of the body's energy, Kane had swapped out his entire internal mana reserve for a concentrated, unstable form of living energy. It was like trying to replace all your blood at once. The risk was insane. Yen stared at him again as he yawned. Hey, are you sure you're okay? I already told you, my shoulders still feel a bit off. I'm not talking about your back. She almost yelled, but to keep her composure in front of the other students, it came out as a tense, frustrated whisper. Kane gave her a smile, clearly amused by how flustered she looked after drawing some attention. Embarrassed to be walking next to a commoner? Maybe I am. Yen might seem persistent, but what Kane had done was insane. If he had died, no one would have been surprised. Where did all that energy he absorbed go? It was strange and incomprehensible. He was still a Class 2 mage. He didn't even have advanced body training or any extra benefits on his body. How could he be walking around like nothing happened? She was still deep in thought when Professor Melis's voice echoed from up ahead. All right, class. We're here. The students sighed in relief. Ah, finally, man. Took long enough. I thought I was gonna pass out. The Transmutation Garden finally came into view. A wide space surrounded by stone walls covered in magical runes. It looked old, with a rustic yet elegant vibe. At the center was a semicircular pavilion made of arcane glass, where alchemy experiments could be conducted safely. The area also had small watchtowers and Class 3 guards posted at the edges, mostly for show. Their presence was more symbolic than functional. The academy was still visible in the distance, a silhouette on top of the hill. The feeling of being outside the protection was subtle, but real. Looks like we're getting another alchemy class on magical purification. Ugh, so boring, Lyra mumbled as she passed by Elena, who was walking close to Kane. She wrapped her arm around her friends and said, "You do everything again and I'll help with whatever you need, okay?" Thanks for the unconditional support, as always. Elena replied with a sarcastic smile. Looks like she's pretty relaxed. Just like Kane, Elena also knew what was coming. But since the game never showed events from her perspective, he had no idea what she had prepared or what was going through her mind. Should I just raise my hands and let things play out? Luckily, ever since absorbing the crystal, Kane had been feeling better. The only issue was his mana, which still hadn't fully stabilized. Time had passed, and Aaron, the magic combat professor, had made it clear he shouldn't push himself too hard. Maybe it was just his bad luck, but she had already noticed something different. She knew Cain wasn't normal. High-class mages could feel it. The pure mana flowing through his body wasn't ordinary. His presence pulsed in a strange way, almost like it was alive. He remembered her words perfectly at the end of the class, ===. Aaron stopped him when all the other students had already left. I don't know exactly how you're making pure mana flow through your body, but if those fluctuations stay unstable, you're going to have serious problems. Cain kept his usual expression, trying not to show any reaction. But inside, he was a bit surprised. At least she doesn't know about my point of inertia yet. That was the only thing keeping him calm for now. TCH. You don't have to tell me what you've been doing. Just try not to overdo it, okay? It'd be a shame to lose a class assistant. Assistant? Did she mean test subject? Cain wasn't sure if Aaron was genuinely concerned about him or just thinking about her own amusement. But a good action was still a good action. He gave a small, tired smile and raised his hand to say goodbye. But instead of a simple wave, he gently placed his hand on her head. Like he was calming down a hyperactive child. And relax, Aaron froze for a moment. Her eyes subtly shifted downward, avoiding direct eye contact. She didn't say a word. You don't need to worry. I'm fine. Cain left his hand there for a few seconds, then walked off like it was the most natural thing in the world. Now, with all the students gathered in the center of the transmutation garden, Melis finally began the explanation. Today we'll be doing a fieldwork exercise. You'll need to head out in groups of up to 3 people and search for natural magical ingredients around the forest. Some students looked at each other, clearly excited about the chance to explore. I want each of you to collect the ingredients needed for the recipe you developed in our last class. Use your notes and what we studied to identify the correct materials. Then come back here, and we'll work on preparing the formulas. At that moment, the professor's assistant, Voltaire, stepped forward and added, "Don't worry about safety. This whole area is under surveillance, and the boundaries have been confirmed. The environment is safe. Just stick to groups of 3 and don't stray too far from the perimeter." While the students organized into groups, Cain moved a bit away, observing the trees around them, the shadows in the woods further ahead. I need to find a way to sneak out and absorb mana. Ever since he absorbed the crystal's energy, his mana core had been almost empty. He had recovered a bit overnight, but it was nothing compared to how much he usually recharged in areas rich with natural mana, like the grove. Luckily, the mana flowing around this forest was decent. Not quite like the grove, but enough for Cain. This bastard. Is he really that shameless? Elena listened closely to what Voltaire, Melis's assistant, had just said. She felt a real urge to burn him on the spot. Lying about the area's safety to unsuspecting students while plotting something behind the scenes? Disgusting. But without proof, and knowing no one would believe her, she had only one option: prepare. Last time, everything went wrong the moment she decided to wander off alone into the forest. Her biggest mistake. And she wasn't planning to make it again. She had learned something important from that past experience. The attack during the alchemy class wasn't just aimed at Professor Melis. That had only been the distraction. The real target was someone much more specific. Her eyes shifted subtly, landing on a figure a few meters ahead, a girl with an elegant posture, long black hair, and dark eyes. She seemed unaware, watching the students form their groups. It was her. Yen. Just like Elena, last time she had also wandered off alone to look for ingredients. A mistake that came with a price. Elena noticed where exactly her eyes were focused. She was staring straight at Cain. Maybe, this time things will end more easily than before. Chapter 24, when everything still seemed normal. Elena watched as the students gradually began to disperse. Yen stood a bit ahead, scanning the surroundings with her usual introspective and distant look. She seemed to be evaluating who to form a group with, but unlike Elena, she showed no rush or interest in interacting with others. Unlike most nobles there, Yen didn't care about social bonds. In her past life, Elena remembered that well. Yen had spent most of her time buried in magical studies, isolated, indifferent to noble social circles or power dynamics. Personal relationships were never her priority. Maybe I should take advantage of that lack of emotional filters. Yen's social detachment had definitely contributed to her isolating herself too much. Because of that, in her past life, she was captured before anyone even noticed she was gone. Elena knew she couldn't let that happen again. Without overthinking the kind of distractions that cloud the minds of normal teenagers, she made a move. No fear. No shame. Well, looks like it'll be just the two of us. Lyra, who was walking beside Elena, stopped mid-sentence as she watched her friend suddenly walk away. On. Where are you going? Elena ignored her and walked straight to Yen. In her past life, they had worked on a few tasks together. But in this new timeline, this would be their first direct contact. Yen, do you already have a group for Professor Melis's activity? Yen turned her face slowly. Her black, cold eyes met Elena's calmly and, unfortunately, with zero sympathy or warmth. Damn, I've already thought of someone. But, before Elena could finish her sentence, Yen had already turned her back and walked away without a second thought. Elena stood there silently for a moment, then gave a small smirk. You little brat. Right behind her, Lyra appeared with an amused sparkle in her eyes. Wow, you just got rejected. Looks like the Magic Tower folks are really cold. Elena didn't answer. Being turned down by Yen wasn't what she wanted, but it was still something she had expected. She just kept her eyes on the girl as she walked away. And just as she predicted, Yen's steps led her straight toward Kane. I really don't know how things ended up taking the most unlikely turn, but it looks like something worked. Yen approached Kane, who looked lost in thought. His eyes were half closed, staring into nothing. Kane. Are you listening? Kane blinked slowly, snapping out of his trance. When he turned his head, he saw Yen staring at him with her hands on her hips and a slightly grumpy expression. Since you're not doing Professor Melis's activity with anyone, want to form a group? That way we can get it over with quickly. Kane listened while still trying to focus. His eyes drifted to her face. She avoided looking directly at him, lips pressed into a thin line. Yeah, she's definitely not used to asking for anything. It was a slightly irritated look, but still pretty. But contrary to what Yen thought, Kane wasn't the least bit concerned with Melis's class. His mind was somewhere else. The mana inside him still hadn't stabilized since absorbing the Viralis core. He needed some time alone to recharge safely. However, leaving Yen alone would be a problem. He sighed internally. He raised one hand like he was about to brush her off and started walking. Sorry. I plan to do this alone. Good luck finding someone. Yen's eyes widened. What? Seriously? Kane turned his head slightly. No, I'm just messing with you. Let's go. SHHHF. Yen let out a sharp huff, cheeks puffing slightly. Kane let out a quiet laugh as he saw her eyes flare up in a mix of anger and embarrassment. Her face is better than any rare ingredient. Looks like they're getting pretty close lately. The voice came from beside Elena, slow and full of mischief. Lyra was watching the two of them walking side by side toward the forest. Elena kept her eyes on them as they joined Marco. She felt a bit relieved knowing Yen would be with Kane now. Still, something was bothering her. When did they even get that close? Maybe her presence alone, in this new life, had changed more things than she imagined. Elena. Mind if I join you too? The voice pulled her back to reality. Raiden stood in front of her, face neutral, but eyes sharp and focused. Elena held his gaze for a second, then thought, yeah, maybe I really am screwing up the timeline. 20 minutes later. Kane, Yen, and Marco were walking together through the forest. Kane's plan had been simple at first. Use the chaos of the first field class to collect the ingredients for the internal pulse essence. It was something he already knew from the game and could replicate easily. The situation seemed perfect. He knew all the patterns of this event. But what he didn't count on was being accompanied by 2 walking problems. Marco might not be that bad. But Yen was a whole different story. Kane just wanted to enjoy the moment. But despite everything, he knew that if something happened to them, he'd feel bad for doing nothing. Oof. Why did we even come here? The professor said there was nothing useful in this area. There's something I want to do. Yen narrowed her eyes. Something? What do you mean? Marco pulled a folded piece of paper from his backpack. It's true. According to my notes, these are the ingredients we need. He showed the paper filled with crooked scribbles, poorly written names of magical ingredients, and a few odd drawings. Yen looked at the paper and replied without hesitation. You're terrible at drawing. PFF. KEH. Kane let out a soft chuckle. Ever since his days playing Chronos Realms, he remembered that Yen had always been brutally honest. He even felt a bit sorry for Marco. She never sugarcoated anything. Let me see that. Kane took the paper and studied the scribbles. Maybe I should give him a compliment to make him feel better. After a few seconds looking at Marco's drawings, Kane turned to him with a horrified expression, like he had just witnessed a field Marco should never pursue. This is awful. Yen continued. It doesn't even look like a drawing. Then Kane added, maybe it's abstract art. It's just a reference. Marco snatched the paper back, clearly embarrassed. Reference to what? You can't even tell what it's supposed to be. Unfortunately for the 3 of them, none were good at alchemy. And judging by the circumstances, they'd probably spend a long time searching for the items on the professor's list. Well, it's not like I really wanted to do this anyway. Kane stopped walking. He took a deep breath, trying to sense something. His eyes scanned the area around them. Let's stop here for a bit. Check those herbs around us. He sat down cross-legged like he was about to meditate. Hey, what are you doing? I'm going to think. Keep searching. Just don't go too far. He spoke like he was babysitting 2 younger siblings. Yen raised an eyebrow, clearly not buying it. Are you serious? Meditating now? In the middle of Professor Melis's class? It'll be quick. Just give me a few minutes. Yen huffed. She stopped herself and took a deep breath. Arguing with someone like him wouldn't help. From what little she knew about Kane, she could already tell he wasn't the type to listen. Is it because of the core he absorbed? Maybe that was it. Yen crossed her arms and muttered, TSK. Do whatever you want. But don't take too long or we're leaving you here. Meanwhile. Elena, Raiden, and Lyra were walking through another part of the forest, looking for magical ingredients. Looks like we found another one. Lyra tucked a glowing herb into the alchemy bag. Should we go deeper in? No. Let's keep looking around here. Elena answered quickly. Lyra raised an eyebrow. You sure? From what I know, crimson aluna flowers grow further ahead. Let's search a bit more around this area. But I said we're staying here. Lyra raised her hands in surrender. All right, just saying. While Lyra busied herself organizing the bag, Elena and Raiden continued walking. Elena, is everything okay? Raiden, who was walking beside her, finally asked. Why? We've been circling the starting area for a while. Is there a reason you don't want to go deeper into the forest? Elena paused for a second. She tried to keep her expression natural, but Raiden was more observant than she expected. The truth was simple. She wanted to stay near the starting point, where the guards were stationed. That way, if anything happened, she could run back quickly enough to help the professor. Melis was an excellent alchemist. But she wasn't a combat mage. If attacked, she wouldn't be able to defend herself alone. Elena let out a sigh. Actually, I think, boom. A muffled explosion echoed in the distance. Lyra rushed back toward them. What was that? It came from the transmutation garden. Elena's eyes widened. We're going back. Now. The group dashed toward the source of the explosion. Looks like it started.